Hey everybody, my name is Jetta, and I chose my giant to be George S. Count. And some background about George's life. He was born December 9th, 1889 in Baldwin City, Kansas. He grew up a Methodist and was able to form opinions and understand the brotherhood of fairness. And because of those opportunities and in his religion, he was able to gain some insight that later on would help him in writing his books and all his other accomplishments that we'll go over. George was able to finish 4 years of schoolwork in 2 years when he was a kid going to school and just in the public schools. George graduated from the public high school of Baldwin City in 1907. In September 1913, George married Louise Hazel Bailey, a daughter of a Methodist minister. Hazel and George had two daughters together. George's career and education, we can just go over this. So, George attended college at Baker's University and graduated head of his class with a BA degree, bachelor's degree, in 1911. George enrolled in the Graduate School of the University of Chicago in 1913, where he majored in education and then he minored in sociology. In 1916, George earned his PhD with honors. You can tell that he is a well-rounded guy and very qualified. So George, after his education, he went into teaching. So I'm just going to name off some colleges that he taught at. He taught at Harris Teachers College, St. Louis, and then the University of Washington, Yale University, University of Chicago, and then in 1927, he became a member of the faculty of Teachers College, Columbia University, where he served as Associate Director of the International Institute from 1927 to 1932, and as Professor of Education until his retirement in 1956. George's contributions to the educational field. So George was very influential. George Counts argued for the replacement of traditional capitalism with some form of democratic collectivism in order to avert social and economic chaos. He called for educators to shape the attitudes of children so that they would be receptive to the idea that collective control of the economy was necessary, that we couldn't just let everything run wild. George helped to launch the social frontier, and this was a book that was accumulated with many philosophers' ideas and inputs, and he started working on it with some other philosophers as well. And then George expressed the importance of schools and how they should reflect life rather than isolate life from education, which I strongly believe in. George was the author of 29 books and over 100 articles that helped form education. And all of these were very influential books and articles that are used even now today. So, how George has affected me. Alright, so I love education at first. It wasn't always my favorite. I was just kind of there for the social aspect. But I like how George was a strong believer in rebuilding the social order and involving our education with the social aspect of life. George believed in the enormous potential of education to improve society and that schools should reflect life rather than it to be isolated, which I absolutely love. Like, why isolate life when we can incorporate it into our learning, and that will just benefit us for the rest of our lives. I had one teacher in high school. His name was Mr. Milan, and every single day when I walked in his class, he'd have a prompt up, and it was the headlines of the news that day or whatever was going on, and he would somehow incorporate what was going on in the world, so in life, into our teaching and into his teaching and into our education, and then we would be able to see how they were working hand in hand together and how what we were learning could help solve the crisis, whatever was going on or anything in life. So I believe that George was a firm believer of this, and I'm very grateful for his input and his work in the educational field. I have really enjoyed learning about George S. Count, and I appreciate him, and I hope that you have enjoyed learning about him as well, and I was able to explain it to you, that you were be able to share some light on the topic. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate it.